Another night, and you're still awake, traveler? Can you smell the fragrance of the pines mingling with the crackling of the fire? Ah, how easy it is to let memories slip through your fingers like fine sand. I come here, weary and battered, after yet another journey through the shadows of the silent Citadel. I approached this dancing fire, burdened by my heavy sword, which I released from my side, allowing it to touch the ground with a soft echo. Or perhaps it was just the echo of stories. Overhead, the sky is a deep cloak filled with stars, but they seem distant, like secrets buried in the shadows of that ancient fortress. Sometimes, I think the stars need rest too, just as I do, as the echoes of the past whisper between the branches of the trees. Now the truth, my friend. You probably won't survive this. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to frighten you, but the stories of the Citadel aren't for faint hearts. You'll want to be prepared, and if you're comfortable, sit back and enjoy this narrative we share. Subscribe, follow the paths our memories trace, and if you wish, leave a comment with the name of your city or the last battle you faced today. Now close your eyes, feel the warmth of the fire, and let's walk together through this memory. Or was it a dream? In the shadows of the silent Citadel, there lies a cave, its walls softly illuminated by the lights of a forgotten past. The entrance is so narrow that at first glance it seems an invitation to despair. The murmurs of beginnings and endings breathe in the breeze flowing from the darkness, and you can detect a scent that is somewhat sweet, like honey melting on a warm summer night, though the humidity of the place quickly steals that charm, wrapping you in a somber embrace. I believe it was there, or perhaps not, where I heard the voices of those who never returned. There were rumors, you see, about the explorers of the Citadel, those daring enough to descend into the tunnels hidden beneath its foundations. They say that in the depths, where sunlight dares not touch, lost inhabitants in time and space whispered unreachable secrets. The village children, in a playful tone, said that the sounds came from the black cat guarding the gates of dreams. Others, older folk, spoke of riches, of ruins covered in moss and ravaged by time. I, curious, decided that a chance was worth taking. Crossing the threshold of the cave, the chill was biting, like a knife of ice, and soon the shadows became a moving prayer. The echo of my steps danced in harmony with a distant melody, another lost voice, another forgotten story. A man in worn armor, much like my own, whispered something. My ears barely caught it, but oh, how those words tormented my being. That lamenting litany seemed to call out for me to never leave the darkness again. The atmosphere was thick, like a heavy blanket, wrapping me in its layers of humidity. The walls were cold and rough, as if time itself had carved its surface with long, weary experiences. The touch served as a reminder that those who ventured there once had hopes and souls very much alive. Sometimes I would ask myself, did this really happen? It was a magnificent and dreadful place, a crypt of memories, now echoing in a quiet and soft lament. It felt as if in every drop of water that dripped from the stalactites, there was a fragment of life, lost and unloved. The hearty laughter would float through the corridors, but they were deceptive, subtle as a flower's perfume, that you can no longer identify. There was something trapped in that space, waiting for someone to set it free. And it was there that I left something, but I can't recall what. Ironic, isn't it? A knight in search of past pleasures, carrying something of uncertain nature. You know, I wandered in daydreams, and because of that, I let reason slip away like sand through the hands of a dreamer. I remember a gleam in the distance, something twinkling as if its own light was wondering why it was there. My steps hesitated, but the echo called my name. I simply wanted to know. But oh, dear listener, curiosities come with a price. For those who ask too many questions in the shadows, the answer is a whisper made of fragments of memory and echo, of what cannot be forgotten. When I finally ascended again to the surface, the mist had already taken over, as if the whole world wished to cover the untold secrets of that place. Like a parent tucking an asleep child into a warm blanket. There, in the breath of dawn, the wind whispered in my ears the stories I hadn't told, the echoes I hadn't heard. And as I gazed upon the Citadel, with its fallen towers and dusty windows, I realized that it too was dreaming. And even now, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. The lost tunnels, a name that drags like the echo of a distant whisper on the walls of my weary memory. They say, if anyone still says anything about them, that those curved, dark hallways, made of cold stone, lead to depths where time crumbled away, just like a dream fades upon waking, or when getting out of bed. Once, I believe, I walked in their shadows, but oh, how everything mixes in the mists of the mind, doesn't it? There was a time when the moonlight seeped through the worn entrance of a tunnel, casting patterns of light and shadow dancing on the ground, as if the very road had life. The whispers of those corridors, oh, how they called to me. Now at this hour of the night, only the soft crackling of the fire is my comfort. But sometimes, in moments of solitude, I think I still hear their echoes, as if the stones held secrets I could never decipher. I think it was there, or perhaps not, that my first great adventure occurred, if I can even call it an adventure. I remember a sound that wasn't exactly a sound, but a deep murmur, a melodious song that seemed to emanate from the bowels of the earth. It was as if the very rock was telling forgotten stories, tales lost in the mists that could never take shape under the light of day. The smell of moisture, strong and heavy, drained my resolve, while stoking a persistent curiosity. I was no longer a knight, but a wanderer lost in my own labyrinth of thoughts. Through those tunnels, the walls seemed to close in on me, as if they were taking another step closer. The cold I felt inside wasn't merely of the environment, but the cold that coursed through the veins of the rock, chilling as an echo. And in the midst of that stone and shadow labyrinth, something, or someone, followed me. Or perhaps I merely imagined this presence, this consciousness. Sometimes I wonder if everything I experienced really happened, or if I let myself be led by an illusion woven by fatigue and loneliness. Curious creatures danced across my spirit that night. I never saw faces, but I swear I felt eyes. Perhaps eyes small as those of a mouse, or large like those of a starving wolf, watching my every step. Once I thought I glimpsed a glimmer, a spark scuttling away, but once more the haze of uncertainty hurried to keep up. If I recall correctly, and it's been so long, it's hard to be certain. One of the walls of the tunnel had a peculiar texture, velvety and cold, like the skin of a long-forgotten sea creature. Sometimes I would touch those stones, as if it were possible to feel through them the unfolding story of those who had been there before. No one returned. And how could they? That atmosphere, almost dreamlike, dulled the memory of everyone who entered there. It's curious how the scent of damp earth can be both comforting and haunting, like the breath of a place that has forgotten the world above. I remember coughing, and my cough reverberated in the tunnels like the drum of a heart still beating between the stones. Plop, plop, and then the echo fades like my memories. Once, a presence touched my shoulder, and the sensation was colder than the marble surrounding me. The wind rose unexpectedly, bringing with it an almost audible whisper, as if the walls were screaming at me to leave, to step away from the depths that could swallow my essence. But still I pressed on, as one seeking the light of an impossible desire and not influence. As I walked, my thoughts began to tangle, like the branches of a tree in the midst of a storm. There was something that made me hesitate at every step, a feeling that made me want to turn back, but the curiosity was a shadow that wouldn't let me be. At one fold of the tunnel, I found a small stalactite reflecting the earth's moisture. It shone, if I'm not mistaken. A fleeting glimmer in that almost eternal darkness, and I was caught in doubt. What could have caused that shine? The mind rebels, and I wonder if I wasn't just seeing what I wanted to see. The image encapsulated itself in my heart like an untold tale, and I found myself ever more lost among the lines of my own thoughts. A bat, although I think the word bat doesn't capture all the strangeness of that vision, passed by me in absolute silence. Like the shadow of a forgotten desire, in the blink of an eye, disappeared into the mist. It's curious, isn't it? How the presence of little things, which we generally overlook, can leave marks on our memories. Sometimes I'm intrigued by the idea that the world, in all its vastness and simplicity, hides secrets that even knights do not know, or do not truly remember. Suddenly, resting against a cold wall, I let out an involuntary laugh. I knew that many in search of adventure had entered those tunnels, and I, with all my steel armor and bravery, seemed just like an old dreamer seeking a truth among whispers. And of course, how could I forget to mention, the journey of a weary knight in search of treasures inevitably shrinks to the weight of what he thought he could have found, or sometimes left, behind. It is, after all, the uncertainty that truly echoes in the tunnels of memory. When I sit by the fire and watch the dancing flames, I no longer know if what I lived is real, or merely another whisper among the many that have passed through the corridors of my weary mind. The more I reflect, the more I adjust the weight of what seems to be true in the eternal night that surrounds us. Even today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. Sometimes, when I recall those memories, I feel as if I'm lost among shadows. The last lights that dimmed. They were like flickering candles in the twilight, weren't they? I remember a place, or perhaps a dream, where people's faces slowly faded, as if they were mysteries floating in thick mists, and I just a weary spectator, always waiting for something that never came, or had it already arrived. The quiet Citadel, once a beacon of hope. Now, this fortress of stone, with its walls covered in moss and its towers stripped of pride, remains in my mind like a lord who forgot his past. Sometimes, when the fog sneaks through the corridors of memory, I imagine that the echoes of laughter and whispers still dance there, though I can no longer remember who they were. It makes me wonder, did they really exist? Or were they merely ghosts of days gone by, intertwined with dust and erased memories? The flickering lamps cast brittle shadows that danced gently on the cold walls. I heard rumors of the tunnels beneath the Citadel, those labyrinths that stretched far away, filled with murmurs shaken by the wind. I never entered such depths, so far as I can recall. But as I said, my memory is a road filled with holes, and sometimes I wonder if it was all just a confused dream. The scent of the moist earth, of roots intertwining beneath the surface enveloped me and beckoned me, as if the voices of those before implored me to listen. Or perhaps they were just the echoes of my own solitude. The faces, those faces I once saw so clearly. The face of a young woman named Eleanor. Her smile still shines in my eyelids, like a flame that refuses to extinguish. I remember how she walked lightly, as if floating, and her laughter. Well, it sounded like the song of birds at dawn, full of promises and dreams. But now, all I have left is the memory of a brilliance that was overshadowed, a light that extinguished the moment we entered the tunnels, deeply immersed in darkness. Then there was Bartholomew, a friend of laughter, and shared beers around the fire. He always told me that laughter was a sword against melancholy. But, how the times change. I remember his voice softly echoing, his engaging presence, but the last time I saw him was that day. That day we ventured into the shadows of the Citadel. I looked back, and then he was no longer there. That was before. I can't remember how everything unraveled. What I know is that, in the gloom, as we lost ourselves, some light extinguished within me. And when everything fell silent, like a piano with broken strings, I was enveloped by the feeling that darkness had become our home. The murmurs of voices, our conversation made of small promises that everything would be fine. And then it all dissolved. The gloom drew a curtain over everything simply, as if suddenly all faces turned into smudges of a watercolor left in the sun, unidentifiable, ethereal, disappearing with each passing second. That night in the Citadel, sometimes I wonder if it was night or day. Time surely got lost among the shadows. Oh, how the cold began to seep into those caverns. It was a feeling I could almost touch, so to speak, a smooth and cold texture, like a vapor enveloping our bodies, and the voices passing, almost like ants, whispering something I never quite managed to understand. I remember closing my eyes and listening. The noise echoing in the damp corridors. Their whispers seemed both invitations and warnings at the same time. And oh, the light that had gone out, the last light, seemed a warning while bringing a sweet melancholy. One day, who knows, a wizard may come, and he shall lift the veil of darkness that enclosed us. But until then, here I am, around this fire, wrapped in memories that slip away like mist, as if they wish to escape through the cracks of my understanding. And even now, sometimes, I feel the emptiness in my fingers, as if I had left something behind, something I cannot identify. But what could it be, I wonder? What could it be? If I had a mirror, perhaps I could see those faces still there, still dancing in the gloom. Eleanor with her shining eyes, Bartholomew with his echoing laughter. I close my eyes trying to remember, and, well, I can't guarantee that I don't see a faint glow, a light down below, soft and warm, but perhaps it's only the fire's flame reflecting in my tired mind. One day, while crossing back from those caverns, I thought I could hear the Citadel itself summarizing its laments. With its walls, its echoes, and its lost inhabitants, I sometimes catch myself thinking that perhaps those faces haven't truly disappeared, but instead melded with the cold stones, became part of the place, like a whisper lost in the wind. And even when day becomes night, when shadow turns into light, I see silence envelop everything in the Citadel. And who knows, when no one else is listening, those memories may softly echo through time. like an old song of love, or perhaps a lament beneath the earth. Oh, how sad to think we will never return. And then, will our faces also fade into the gloom? With that at that, I leave this question to float between us, if there's anyone here to hear. Even today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. The echoes within the tunnels beneath the silent Citadel. The steps. The steps. I remember well, as if the mist still hovered around me, like a heavy cloak that whispers at times and screams in silence at others. Those caves are like the distant dreams of someone who forgot to wake up, aren't they? That place, with its constant dampness, was a labyrinth of memories, or perhaps just a maze of, well, nothing. The wet walls seemed to absorb light, and sounds dragged on, as if time itself had grown too tired to move. Once, as I descended one of those ancient stairs, which seemed to slip beneath my feet, I heard footsteps. They were not footsteps of men or creatures that breathe, but, something more ethereal, as if the very shadow had decided to dance in its darkness. A light sound, gentle, almost like the murmur of an ancient song, lost in the mists of oblivion. Sometimes I think if that really happened. But who am I to claim? Was it my wavering mind? Or was that really the dance of sleepy creatures, slipping between the cracks of the world, creating echoes that traveled like leaves in the wind? It was hard to tell. I remember stopping when the shadows danced, seemingly enveloping me in a sleepwalking embrace. The sounds intertwined, crossed, and suddenly there was a melody that sounded like an abandoned dream, a song in the air. I searched for a more concrete being, but all I found were indistinct silhouettes, making me ponder if reality was merely a whim of the heart, or if, in fact, those creatures, inhabitants of the forgotten realms below, echoed through my mind. Sleepy boys and girls, perhaps, dancing by the light of an invisible flame. As for those creatures, I can't remember them well. In fact, I do not dwell in clear memories. Once I believe I saw a pair of large, damp eyes, like the moon reflected in still water, but no. It was perhaps merely the reflection of my own darkness, wasn't it? A shine slipping through the cracks, merely suggesting what could be. The texture of the ground, rough and covered with a mold that smelled of ancient history. A scent that blends with the lament of the past, not too different from the odor of a life that has gone, or the overcoming of a deep sleep. Matter and spirit intertwined, as if they were partners in a dance that wasn't decided by fun, but by a deep exhaustion. Oh, as mine, perhaps. At first I thought they were mere hallucinations, a fruit of the fatigue accumulating in my weary bones. But I believe that, in the dead of night, the mind is also a cavern. Shadows can tell stories, and even create new ones. Sacred steps on a sweet floor, like the perception of a dream while slipping into the unknown future, or perhaps back to a past that no longer exists. It was a fluid movement, almost ethereal, as if life and death were exchanging places in an endless dance, seeming to know what they were doing, unlike me, who lost myself with every tremor of the breeze. And perhaps I found a place, a hall, or was it a foyer, where the lines of light and darkness met so subtly that it reminded me of the day I first met the moon. There was a dampness there, a sound of dripping droplets that echoed like the laughter of children far away, those who are so tired they fall asleep at their mother's feet. And of course, the cold, A cold that wasn't uncomfortable, but precisely an invitation to contemplation. Or perhaps there, a creature danced among shadows and weak lights, its hidden forms like the truths we faded in the fog of time. Perhaps the true mystery is what we never understand. I, an old knight, sitting amidst echoes and steps, realized that sometimes things need to remain hidden, veiled in the mist surrounding them. These are the signs that do not dissipate, but accumulate in our hearts. No? Unspoken conversations, the murmur of souls roaming through those corridors, like those steps, seeming to whisper secrets that only dreamers can hear. With everything, it seems that there is an echo resonating within me. Perhaps one day I will discover what. In fact, on one of those sleepless nights, a strange feeling approached me. An idea that the very tombs of these secret corridors that may or may not exist beneath our feet have their own stories. At one moment I remember asking myself, and if the creatures of the shadows, with their soft feet and silent steps, are merely the murmurs of folklores I never knew, dancing slowly amid the memories fading. The thought almost makes me smile, and then I fell into the understanding that the dark brings with it a knowledge that cannot be shared. A dance in an empty hall, inviting me to follow, or inviting me to stay. It was like seeing, like listening. Could it be an echo of a dream, recalling a time that perhaps never existed? That single, one step could lead me to a place that only darkness can comprehend. The wind whispered, and the distant lament reminded me that sometimes we all dance alone, even when we believe that the steps echo from another person, or from the core of a forgotten soul that was there. And so I sat, listening to the echoes fading into the air, a breath of life and sleep, and everything seemed so far away, as if time slipped between my fingers like water. And yet, I continued to observe. Perhaps one day I will find the answer, the sleeping creatures and their mysterious dances on the dusty stairs that always lead us somewhere. Or not, who would know? Even today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. Another night, and you're still awake, traveler. I sit here by the crackling fire, its flames dancing like shadows from a past we can't quite recall. The darkness of the night brings to light forgotten whispers and fragments of rituals that, I believe, were lost in the currents of time. But what are rituals if not echoes of voices that come and go, like the breeze pushing leaves outside? In truth, that night, something followed me from the forest, but perhaps I was just too tired to remember rightly. I once ventured to the silent Citadel, a crumbled fortress where moss sprawled over the damp stones as if trying to hold on to dusty secrets. The towers seemed suspended in time, or sleep, as if they couldn't tell the difference between wakefulness and dreams. For it is there, among tombs cloaked in mist, that I left something, but don't recall what. And you know, traveler, maybe you won't survive this. I still remember the texture of the cold walls, which felt like a pulse against my fingers. Each touch beckoned memories, or were they just hallucinations awakened by the earthy scent? The smell was thick as the murmur of old sacrifices, whispers of souls mingled with the dampness of the tunnels. Sometimes I thought I heard laughter, but it was lost laughter, or perhaps just echoes of my own weary mind, confused. In the twilight of the forgotten chamber, where only moonlight dared to penetrate, I found marks. The marks. Crafted in a ritualistic anguish that spanned eons, as if the very essence of time cried. Rituals done in the name of deities that had long gone, practices buried within the cold stones, with promises of lives and deaths intertwined. I think I saw a clay doll, already almost obliterated by the moisture, an offering that, who knows, might never have been accepted. Sometimes I ponder if it all truly happened, or if, out of sheer weakness, I simply hallucinated. The story of our world is filled with shadows and sheets of dust, and those who entered the subterranean entities often did not return. The path that led inward seemed to twist like threatening serpents, whispering secrets I could barely catch, and at the same time, a sad echo, as if something were calling out to me from below. Yet who knows? Perhaps it was just loneliness calling me, or the darkness itself, with its heavy cloak. With the weight of those marks in mind, I heard a distant song. It came like a warm breeze, whispering through the leaves, wrapped in a mystery that did not bring me comfort, only unease. I felt that I was being invited to revisit the rituals, a gentle and seductive call that wasn't entirely malevolent. What did I have to pay? What did I have to offer? Maybe a little more of my own exhaustion, or a fragment of my mind. And that echo, it still reverberated, didn't it? A scale still held by the ancient gods, even though they perhaps no longer desired our presence. There was a creature there, I think. What was it? A being that moved in the shadows, a faint glimpse. No, perhaps it was not a creature at all, but a lost soul, who knows? A glimpse of what we had sacrificed along the way. Suddenly I was lost in a fog of thoughts, no longer knowing if it was truly a monster or merely my own shadow dancing against the wall of that forgotten cave. A memory, perhaps, but one that merged with the pain of not knowing. I felt everything blending. It wasn't just the memory of rituals, but a deep echo that told stories of sacrifices, of men and women who surrendered their hopes in exchange for something nebulous, something they never got to see, perhaps a lost glimmer on the horizon of eternity. A sound almost musical, but at the same time sad, as if each note carried a lament. How I couldn't remember. And so those voices were just fragments, moments that faded as I touched them. The flames of the fire flicker, bringing to life shadows that dance, like those memories I know I can't tell if they are mine, or just echoes of other times. To move forward always seems to be the right path, yet there is always a doubt. Am I indeed the one moving forward? Or are the shadows guiding me backward, gently dragging me into the depths of my own insecurities? Always questioning this, wondering if I'm a navigator or a prisoner. How tiring it is to devour one's own mind. The hours pass, but never truly leave me, and I feel the fate of the rituals wrapping around me, as if somehow I had also been part of that sacrifice, even without knowing. When I returned that night to that chamber, it felt different. The echo of the rituals still pulsed. The cosmic cries seemed to intertwine with my own sighs of weariness, as if I were breathing there deeply, merging with everything, and yet so alone. A slow dance between the whispers and the flames, between what was and what would be, between life and death. Finally, I realized that what I had truly lost wasn't the memory, but my ability to allow myself to feel, to forget what is to run. I learned, over these weary years, that sometimes sacrifice is not an act of loss, but of acceptance and surrender. And I still wonder if one day someone found something, or if they simply got lost in the echo of the ritual, as I did. And that place, in the light of the fire, became a blend of time and space, enveloped in memories that danced through the gloom like evening moths. The moss fairies. I only remember them in fragments, in whispers in the night breeze, like an old song resonating through the ruins of forgotten castles. They danced in a swamp, where time seemed to slip away like through the fingers of an old weary man. The stories told me they were small beings, like the mists that form at dawn, perhaps with wings that shimmered, or not. A veil of fog hidden them, allowing curiosity to turn into fascination. They say that in that land called Quiet Citadel, there was a tunnel, or will there be several? I can't be sure. The locals whispered in furtive conversations that the moss fairies inhabited the dark depths, far from human sight, away. A place where laughter echoed, but not laughter of joy. It would be more like a call, a lament. The few who dared venture into the tunnels never returned, but sometimes I wonder if it was the fairies who didn't allow their return, or if they themselves surrendered to the enchantment. I, your humble knight, have heard tales of travelers who got lost in those caverns, recounting that the moss was soft and slippery, like time itself, and that upon touching its surface, a sense of peace would invade one's being. But that wasn't a gentle touch. No, it was something deeper, darker. I feel it's hard to explain. Perhaps I'm just too tired to find the right words, but I can still remember the smell. The smell, traveler, was of wet earth after the rain, mixed with what I imagine is the sweet perfume of flowers that only the fairies know. Or were they the roots? I don't know. Sometimes, while walking through the woods, when the sun hid between the leaves, I'd swear I could hear them. Those dancing legends whispering between the trees, almost like muffled laughter, punctuated by the sound of dry leaves under invisible feet. They said that the moss fairies fed on the dreams of those who dared to dream aloud, and thus the forsaken and forgotten fields became a place of passage or waiting. Who could say? Reality unfolded there, like the mysteries life insists on camouflaging. Now I think, were they truly dreams, or wouldn't it be fairer to call them echoes of lost memories? There was an old sage in the village. I don't know his name, but I remember his trembling hands gesticulating as he spoke about the moss fairies, with eyes that glimmered like everything he said. What was it? Wrapped in a cloak of dreams and memories. Or were they nightmares? He always added that in the tunnels, where the fairies danced, the walls were covered with a green moss that pulsed like the heart of a great sleeping creature. Or perhaps the heart of the fairies themselves. Sometimes I wonder if all that really happened, or if the fog of my mind, today misty, created those images in my memory. What were those fairies? I never met them, but there was something in the way the sage spoke that made me recall his own childhood. You know, traveler, that twinkle in one's eyes that seems to refer to a world we've never known, yet feel when we touch it somewhere deep within our soul. It was as if he said, amid laughter and tears, "Beware, don't go there, for what is found there may not have return." But then why would the fairies dance if they didn't wish for company? The confusion, and the breeze fluttering like messages. What troubled me the most in his tales was a question. If someone really dares to enter, what do they find? The murmur of laughter, the whispers contained, the promise of a wish, or the emptiness of things that have gone, perhaps sketched on walls thick with moss. And when the mist covered the citadel, I thought I saw shadows contorting into shapes I could barely describe, as if the very fairies were watching me. They were just shadows, only just shadows. But oh, what are shadows but the absence of light, or a representation of that which no longer exists? Now, when I stop and listen to the popping of the fire, I feel that even the shadows look at me, and with every crackle, a new fragment of the story seems to reveal itself in the night. Sometimes, if the wind blows hard, you might imagine that those who never returned, those who threw themselves into the abyss of the tunnels, might hear the songs and laugh at us while we feel lost in the labyrinth of our memories, an echo of easy laughter that is easy to hear but impossible to grab. What would happen if, for a moment, we allowed ourselves to enter those fairies? It must be a feeling. Or is it but a dream? A dream in the style of what the fairies desire. That feeling of softness, of fluidity, while the mind meanders in the curves of not knowing. Please believe me, when I look up at the moon up high, so distant, I see the dance of the fairies in the moss. Or would that be a mere daydream? How many questions arise like sunflowers when the sun rises under the gaze of a moth, and the certainty of what is real. You, traveler, have you ever wondered if you feel the same while listening to my words? Sometimes I find myself laughing at how, in the face of all this, doubt persists. And of course I always say, if you don't believe in fairies, why not try a bit of moss? It sounds fun, doesn't it? At least you'll have a good story to tell, even if no one believes it. And so the moss fairies continue to dance. I continue to lose myself in thought beside the gently crackling fire. And still today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. The haze. The haze that envelops the Citadel. It was like a veil of mystery, woven by invisible hands, or perhaps forgotten hands. There was a time when I walked that place with heavy feet and a hazy mind, as if the very fog were wrapping me in a whispering embrace, pulling me away from the truths I barely dared to touch. Sometimes I think that if I looked long enough into the haze, some truth might unravel. But no, it remained, like a distant guardian, only laughing at my unrestrained desire to understand. The Citadel, with its stained walls and crooked towers, became a wandering spirit, lost among shallow memories and distant echoes. I remember a particular day when the mist danced as if it were alive, rippling like a falcon's wing in a sky of uncertainties. There was something in that haze, as if it held secrets from other times, as if there, in the folds of the fog, the laughter of souls who jumped into questions without answers echoed. I was there once, a young knight, wafting between shadows and memories, searching for what fled from me. There, among the stone walls covered with moss, was a door made of dark, worn wood, almost hidden by the vegetation embracing it. There were those who said it led to tunnels that held secrets. I can't be certain. I believed I heard whispers, perhaps just the winds. Oh, how the winds of the Citadel intertwine in disconnected songs. And on some occasions, I believed they might truly tell stories. They were soft murmurs, almost an invitation. Yet in those moments I wanted much more than to hear. Curiosity became a shadow, and it followed me as my invisible companion. The thick fog embraced me, and at times I would close my eyes to perceive it. It is as if it rendered me deaf to everything around, except to the distant echo of my own thoughts. What melancholy. I tried to recall the warmth and safety of a homely fireplace, but the haze whispered in my ear, telling me that homes are ephemeral. There was once cheerful laughter, perhaps, related to a time that no longer existed. Ah, how I longed to touch truth, to tear that veil and discover what lay behind the haze. The villagers spoke of the mist with a deep respect, as if it were an entity that ought to be approached with a touch of reverence. I certainly was not wise enough at the time. I began to believe the fog had its own eyes and that it watched everyone challenging its face. The scent of dew mingled with the air, a sweet and earthy aroma that outstripped any perfume I had ever smelled. And its touch. Oh, its touch was like wet silk, softly creasing the skin, and at the same time chilling, like the coldest memories. The mist seemed to hide not just truths, but also figures from a distant time. I remember once, perhaps it was an illusion or a vision, seeing something which at first appeared to be a shadow dancing, a slender, ethereal figure, wrapped in the mist as if it were part of its essence. Would it be a spirit? I wondered, or merely a reflex of my own mind, groping in the dark of solitude. Sometimes I ponder if it all truly happened, just as when dreaming of a rose that, when touched, crumbles into dust. I tried to call out to it, but my voice lost itself in the fog, and in the fog, the echo of distant laughter mingled with what could have been the sound of forgotten letters. And what else could it have been? Looking back, I see that the Citadel was not only filled with people, but it was an entanglement of emotions and memories, many of which I had buried myself. Ah, and the fog continued to cover, as an artist who never tires of painting. They were strokes of mystery, coming and going, intertwining like stories we never let out. I noted how time, like a river, carried away memories of those who passed through, as if it was intent on erasing them, one by one. How strange to think, isn't it? Perhaps the fog just didn't want to be stripped bare. I could mention a hidden truth, but at this moment, I believe the mist itself is the answer. The echoes became confused, an overlay of voices from the past. Did you hear something? No, it was just the wind playing. And I laughed quietly to myself, until an erratic sound, one only I could hear, began a serenade of uncertainties. Somewhere the fog whispered that we all are parts of the same enigma, a lost piece in a vast web of stories, and stories that were forgotten, like I, for I am a fragment. And perhaps, in one of those sleepless nights, a strange thought approached me, an idea that the tombs themselves, those secret corridors that may or may not exist beneath our feet, have their own tales. At one point I recall asking myself, and if the creatures of shadows, with their gentle feet and silent steps, are merely the murmurs of folklores I never met, dancing slowly between fading memories. That thought almost makes me smile. And then I fell into the understanding that darkness bears knowledge that cannot be shared. A dance in an empty hall inviting me to follow, or inviting me to stay. It was like seeing, like listening. Could it be an echo of a dream, remembering a time that perhaps never existed? That singular, one step could lead me to a place only the darkness can truly grasp. The wind whispered, and the distant lament reminded me that sometimes we all dance alone, even when we think the steps echo those of another, or from within a forgotten soul that was once there. And thus I sat, listening to the echoes that faded into the air, a breath of life and sleep, and everything seemed so distant, as if time slipped between my fingers like water. Yet I continued to watch. Perhaps one day I will discover the answer. The sleeping beings and their mysterious dances in the dusty stairs that always lead us somewhere. Or not. who would know? Even today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. Where did I lose myself? Ah, yes, the silence. The silence between ancient walls. Once upon a time, or perhaps not so long ago, in the quiet Citadel, where the voices used to dance in the breeze, as if telling secrets from remote and forgotten times. But now, how the echo was heavy. The sound of nothingness had become a burden, a cloak of silence settling over each worn stone, every empty corridor. The quiet Citadel was, until then, a vibrant place. I remember, or at least I think I remember, how those walls were filled with laughter and conversations, sounds floating like dry leaves in the wind, intertwining in the cracks of the towers through the energy of living beings. There were echoes of music, the reverberation of hurried footsteps, and even gentle discussions that spread like a perfume in the morning. But now, now, only the lazy murmurs of the wind penetrate the gaps, dragging with it the faded odor of mildew and time. It was a place I once roamed, or perhaps I never truly walked there. I glimpse a blotchy image in my mind, like a painting in candlelight, where the shadows danced slowly against the walls. My footsteps echoed against the worn granite. At times, I found myself in dark halls, where light hardly dared to enter, and that was how everything transformed into a melody of indistinct whispers. But now, the warmth of those interactions evaporated like mist at dawn. Each corner, each room seemed like a shell, or perhaps a void. An embrace turned to silence, a silence thick and heavy. But what remained, save for the memory of those known faces? I ask myself, did they really exist? Or were they mere shadows bowed beneath the weight of a candle blowing out? An archway filled with stories lost in the webs of time. How the air seemed to forget how to speak, to resonate with the simplicity of a hello. Sometimes, I think if that all really happened, if those quarrels, those exchanges, and laughter are now lost in the confines of a dream. There was a corridor, I believe it was the main corridor, where I used to sit. What confusion in my mind, of places I knew and didn't know. Each stone was unique beneath my feet, a mosaic forgotten by our dreams. The rough texture of the walls reverberated with the history of each complaint and laugh that ever echoed. But now, the only noise I hear is the gentle rustling of dry leaves, like a distant whisper, and the pop of the fire illuminating my memory. The comedy of inanimate objects stands watch. You, dear traveler, would you understand this? But sometimes I think I lose myself in thought. And once more, the certainty of living all this dissolves in the bruma of the night. I hear the breeze, as if it brought echoes of what was already gone, like a whisper of reminders that intertwine with time. Once, and maybe a memory recent or very old, I found a strange bird. Was it a bird? Or something without form? This creature, if it was indeed a creature, perched on one of the arches of the cathedral with a vacant gaze, absorbed in contemplation. From its beak, it seemed to emanate a melody, or were they the notes of a lament? The sound mingled with the warmth of the setting sun, and after that, what? Well, nothing. It's like that which was lost in the quiet Citadel. When I walked or crawled through those corridors, the soft perfume of the dewy grass, a mixture of freshness and sap filled the air and made me feel a kind of comfort. However, time took charge of diluting it, like a dream when waking comes. I never quite knew if what I felt was real, or perhaps a form of nostalgia. Ah, and as comforting as a wool blanket on a cold night, this feeling of being enveloped by voices, albeit absent. There was a room, or perhaps a small atrium, where the conversations intertwined like the roots of an ancient tree. Men and women would sit together, telling stories of conquests, or challenging one another in insignificant games, the joy resonating within the stones. But, and this is the irony of memory, now all that's left is a deep, oppressive silence, an echo that even I, the old knight, cannot fill. I wonder, and by the fire, the dance of the flames even reflects on the stone. Did those moments ever exist? Or did in fact one day all this become just an old story that gradually falls silent? The walls hold many secrets, but the greatest doubt is whether they truly keep them. Sometimes I think I left something, or someone there, but I can never recall what. A lost sigh, a faded echo, a moment frozen in a time that no longer exists. The wind whispers through the crevices, as if attempting to reveal something. What is a farewell when you do not know what you left behind? What is, in fact, a farewell? Would it merely be the silent departure of an echo? Or would it be a bold statement that, like me, can't recall the foundation of its own existence? And so at the flickering light of the fire, the silence between ancient walls seems to resonate. I realize that the walls speak, if we think carefully, but in a language I do not understand, a language of absences. Sometimes I sit thinking, like a poet pondering. And where did the laughter go? Where did the dreams go? And now this is the eternal waiting for a return that never arrives. How strange it is to think that time will take more things, more memories. And each time I get lost in these reflections, silence becomes a friend, a dear companion who even without a voice holds my lost stories. And even now, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. A call that no one heard, you say. The voices, those diffused voices that get lost in the fog of an ancient memory. I remember, or maybe I just think I remember, that there was something in the shadows of the caverns beneath the silent citadel. An echo, a breath. Sometimes I think they were whispers of lost souls, or perhaps just the wind playing with the stones. They say the voices call, but how sad. No one seems to want to listen. I recall, or at least I think I recall, one night when I delved into the depths of that dark citadel. In the air, there hung the smell of moss, that somewhat humid and sweet scent, as if the very dampness were trying to murmur forgotten secrets. The path was tortuous, and as the torches danced amidst the darkness, I felt like a traveler lost between the pages of an ancient book, whose stories wiped away, yet remained whispering. They say the stones hold the memory of voices. In those cold cavities, I'd heard rumors of a lament, but it was all so distant, like the echo of a word that had faded, swaying between the immense corridors like a bird that forgot its way back. I delved deeper, then, drawn by that will, not to find something but to listen, to allow myself to be wrapped in what was left. There's something peculiar about the temperatures of the caverns, too. So sometimes it seems the walls breathe, you know. A pungent warmth merging with the coolness of darkness, almost a silent symphony, with the stones marking the beat and the interplay of echoes forming a melody no one else could hear. It was as if the walls conversed with each other, swapping forgotten stories, old narratives filled with tears and intertwined laughter, but which passed only through my ears like a dream that never completes. There was a place more profound that called to me, a chamber that, I believe it was there that I left something, but I can't recall what it was. A fissure in the rock, like a door between what was and what could have been, without ever being opened. The voices murmured as if carrying promises of a time that never existed. Sometimes I think if all that truly happened, or if, out of sheer weakness, I merely hallucinated. And when I settled in that chamber, the voices became more intense, so close that I could swear I felt them. It was a conversation about what once was. Nostalgia floating amid the silence. But as soon as I tried to grasp those words, they slipped away, like water between my fingers. What was I seeking? I didn't know. And here lies the irony of the lonely traveler. Even in the depths of isolation, the desire to hear another soul can become a burden, a weight that paralyzes us. Like a boat adrift on a sea of uncertainties, the echoes seem to intertwine, giving rise to laughs and laments. I could catch again something. Sir Albornoz, I heard a whisper. Sir Albornoz. I think it was my name, perhaps, or merely the mind playing with reality. Then I lost myself in internal wanderings. What did those voices expect from me? What was I to them, or to myself? An intoxication of interlaced existences in which I no longer knew if I belonged to this world or some other. The lines became blurred, and I allowed myself to float in a dream without end, where logic faded away and confusion became a cozy blanket. The sounds were fading, and it all started to merge into a single distant chant, one that you might simply call amusing, had they not crossed into distress. I felt it, something profound, a sense that it was just a fragment, an essence of memories clinging hard to the core of me. I looked for something solid in that whirlpool of whispers, but all I got were faded silhouettes, drifting like lanterns in the mist. Ah, how life is strange. Because I was there too. I came, I saw. But what did I truly discover? I left, not knowing where I'd gone, but at the edge of my understanding, I could still feel the shadows brushing against my thoughts, teasing me for not pursuing the quest a little longer. That what if? I was afraid to follow. Thus I returned, piecing my way back through shadows, while laughter mingled with the silence surrounding me. I left, uncertain yet carrying with me the knowing that those sounds could not follow me, as they were now a part of what remained behind. And now, no one spoke but the echo of a past that also took form in the mysteries of whispers wandering lost, themselves. Even today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. The paths that cross. Sometimes I think of the roads I never walked, but which I knew in dreams. Dreams, you know, these strange windows into other worlds, or perhaps merely echoes from my own weary mind. I remember once, on a fog-laden night, or perhaps it wasn't truly a night, but a glimpse between the real and the ethereal, which makes everything so confusing. I stood before a road that stretched before me like a long sigh. The trees at the roadside swayed gently, as if whispering long-kept secrets. The road had a scent, a sweet and earthy aroma, like a land I never set foot on, yet somehow it felt familiar to me. You know, it's funny. Sometimes I wonder if those trails were real or mere fragments from my dispersed mind. I often thought that the roads of our dreams were like letters from a distant correspondent. Who needs them, really? At times, I gathered the courage to enter, but wide and branching as they were, I knew that at some point the path would vanish. I don't know if that makes sense. The moonlight that night danced over the road, so soft, as if each gleam turned into a whisper in my ear. What did I say? Ah, yes. There was someone, or maybe something, following me. No, not in a bad sense. A gentle spirit that murmured words from a forgotten time. A figure that slipped through the shadows but never revealed itself. Sometimes I felt a pang of joy, as if they wished to accompany me along those paths, while at other times I felt a slight fear. For who truly knows these creatures that wander in dreams? It could be anyone, or maybe just myself, only in another form. Perhaps, perhaps not. I passed over a bridge, a rickety wooden bridge that creaked beneath my weight, and looking down, I saw something gleaming in the dark waters. I couldn't tell if it was a reflection of me or of something I had left behind, or perhaps a remnant of one of those dreams where all blurs and nothing truly seems real. Ah, how easy it is to let those moments slip through your fingers like sand, where all feels imperceptible. Sometimes I imagine those waters have their own stories and speak of travelers who never came back. I do not remember if I was truly there, but within the shadows of memory, perhaps I once floated through those wooden paths, with the fear gently breathing behind me. And the trees, oh, those trees, as if they knew the secrets of the world. I felt the gentle touch of the breeze on my face, and there was something in every leaf that whispered the tale of a weary traveler. Once, or perhaps many times, I laughed at the trees, and they seemed to laugh back, swaying their tops in approval. I measured time in laughter, or were they tears I didn't know how to cry? What's puzzling is how those paths appeared, so often glimpsed. I think that in a dream, a path led me to a cave that echoed the sound of my own voice, but as soon I entered, the echo shattered. Some say that caves are places of the unconscious, of fears and deepest desires. But who needs fears, right? I can't, or rather don't wish to remember what I left trapped inside. Once I wanted to take a chance, but the weight of the secrets I didn't know held me back. Along a trail lined with wildflowers, which seemed to dance with the frailty of light, they observed me with curious eyes and knew everything I felt. And somehow, I felt I knew those flowers, maybe from a past life or from a memory I never let go of. Yet it was still pulsing. Even the scent of the flowers carried a nostalgia, mingled with the fresh autumn night air. Once, I stumbled upon a stone path that glimmered under the moonlight, as if the stones were willingly reflecting light they had no business keeping. Or was it merely my imagination? I walked through that unknown place and heard murmurs in the mist, perhaps voices of souls who roamed those forgotten lands. I asked myself, what awaited me at that crossroads? Or was it I who awaited my own self, fragmented in 1,000 pieces? And it's funny, because every time I lose myself in those thoughts, something inside me says I was never really lost. Well, perhaps just a bit sleepy. I think to myself if that all truly happened. Sometimes I feel I walked those roads, and other times a light touch of doubt invades me. Was it all just a fruit of my weary imagination? Upon traversing those many paths I never tread, I left trails, or perhaps shadows, and at the edge of every strange fate, a music insists. A distant chant, somewhat muffled, like echoes of something I didn't comprehend. What would be the true songs of those paths opened by time? Finally, I was approaching a swaying hill, and upon glancing back, I saw the trails intertwining, like destinies that would never meet. Or perhaps they do in dreams. I don't know why, but in that moment of contemplation, emptiness became a comfortable shelter. I welcomed the feeling that, no matter how strange those journeys were, they were mine, and that ultimately brought me a certain peace. And even now, sometimes, I feel like I left something behind in that place, but I never knew what. Enchanted by these scraps of memories, I continue to navigate through shadows while the real world distorts softly in the mist. Not many would understand. They don't. The memories and dreams unfold into paths that cross. To be lost may be what we know best. Still today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. The forgotten gardens in the depths. Where exactly did I leave that? That scent of flowers I hadn't seen in ages. Yes, it was in the depths, far from the daylight, where even dreams hesitate to venture, pulled into the shadow of a memory that no longer exists. A world that withered, like, as I said, right, underestimated, as if the flower, instead of its fragrance, only the echo of a time that has passed. Those flowers, I can't quite remember their colors. Maybe lilac, or dark blue, like a starless night. I descended those stone stairs that seemed to guide me into the very heart of the earth. And what pursued me there was the mist, this mist that embraced me with its cold and nostalgic touch. Like an old friend who I hadn't seen in years. You know, sometimes I wonder if the mist was just my mind, or perhaps maybe the shadow of a dream that never materialized. With every step, the ground creaked, like a poorly tuned lullaby. The sound echoed against the stone walls, as if the very stones bore secrets. Ancient secrets, perhaps. I don't know if it was the echo of water dripping somewhere far away, or merely just the silence begging to be heard. This reminds me of the story of something that grew there in a crack in the rock, but I don't know exactly what it was. Time does that, takes away the details, and only what still holds in memory remains, like dry leaves at the roadside. Entering deeper, that region seemed to open into a garden, or should I say, what had once been a garden. The roots twisted in an entanglement that did not seem to have an end. It had been a long time since that place knew sunlight. There were ruins of little statues. I remember them, with lost gazes directed towards directions that no longer mattered. The grass, once green and vibrant, now, had withered, as if joy had escaped through the fingers of the earth. The softness beneath my feet had become a carpet of dried leaves, nostalgic, almost melancholic, like a lament held in. Then at a distance, a bold flower, perhaps the only one left, dared to grow between the stones. A blue flower, more vibrant than the very memory. I looked at it and thought that, for a moment, perhaps it was a sign that even in the forgotten depths of sorrow, life still sought ways to express its splendor. But I don't know. What remained there was a heavy silence, as thick as a quilt of uncertainties. I conversed with the flower, I must say. As strange as it may sound, I always thought flowers had ears, or at least what could be called the window of the soul. It seemed to understand something I hadn't yet grasped. And perhaps I made it a promise, a ridiculous promise, sure, as if I could truly rekindle life in something already lost. What for certain was not absurd to think that silence resonated with new sounds. If only I could merely coexist with it, with each tear of remembrance dropping to earth. While contemplating that space that seemed endless, what intrigued me most was a structure covered in moss. A fountain? Yes, a fountain. But its jets didn't dance with a ballet of fresh water. They merely allowed the quietude of a forgotten love. I imagined how it must have been, the laughter of children running, jumping, while the water sparkled like stars in an autumn sky. But that was all I had, all the echoes of a time that passed and left its arms open for another life. And so I asked myself, this profound desire to gaze at something that's extinguished, was it I, or the fountain itself dreaming of the past? For a moment I thought, what if I could stay there for hours, day after day? But would it not be a burden to those who already departed? What had I done to deserve such aspiration? The search for flowers in withered gardens is like trying to remember the taste of something I never tasted. In the forgotten gardens, a place that sings songs made from the notes of nostalgia. Sometimes I ponder if, upon touching the plants, the traces of life welcoming me still existed, and if perhaps the universe... how I lose myself. Perhaps the universe looks back and remembers that we, too, existed. But even so, I thought that perhaps if I had lingered there a little longer, I might find my way back to those days. But I don't know. How the mind wanders through empty thoughts, like a boat adrift in serene seas. The winding path then turned a subtle corner, leading to a clearing covered with moss and ferns as the day darkened, while a notion whispered in the quietness, inviting insights through echoes and signposts. And that's how it has to be, the fading light becoming part of a dream. Still today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. The last battle, if I can even remember. Sometimes a name fades in the depths of the mind, like small leaves swept away by the wind among the ruins of a long-forgotten castle. I believe it was there, at that foggy battle, where shadows danced like specters in search of a story. Or perhaps they were just illusions created by my very own weary mind. Time does this to tired nights, I had the feeling that everything happened within a great mirror, a hazy reflection, where every emotion became distorted and every gesture turned almost ethereal. I feel the echoes in the breeze, the breath of night. It's a soft sound, like the ancient stones of the quiet Citadel, whispering secrets that will never be revealed. What was I saying? Yes, the battle. There were murmurs, and, among them, I saw faces, or at least created faces in indistinct shadows. I tried to remember who fought alongside me, but curiously, every time I sought clarity, everything became more blurred, almost like a fleeting dream at dawn's first light. I still feel at the tips of my fingers the chilling texture of the chains I believed I was holding. Chains. Yes, they were chains, or perhaps just the memory of something that never existed. The whispers in my heart intertwined with the sound of footsteps lost in the caverns beneath that citadel. I could almost sense the moisture descending the walls, like an ancestral tear. At times, some creature emerged between the cracks, but every time I approached, everything dissolved into empty fragments. Life. Life. Sometimes I think that reality is just a grand facade, and what we do within it is merely a disguised dance, a sad anecdote. I wasn't sure if all those who departed were truly that. The doubt will always be the best friend of a tired night, and now Even if the flickering flames of the fire crackle silently, I'm swept away by a breath of the past, where the last battle wasn't a triumph, but a gentle sigh, almost like a memory whispering, fading into directions we never understood. And there, in the depths of a tunnel, I fought against shadows. Or were the shadows fighting against me? I can no longer say. The warmth of battle turned to a chilling thrill. I no longer felt exhaustion, only a hollow echo. The scent of mold and damp earth clung to my memory. Sometimes I feel an animal birthed among the fissures, but every time I approached, they slipped away into thin air. That night I danced with shadows. Now I ponder the necessity of such a dance as I felt enshrouded in doubt. I tried, desperately, to find something, but each time I reached for clarity, it eluded me more vigorously. However, at a corner of the cavern, I came across a glowing stone, or perhaps a pool. Yes, a pool of darkness that shrouded the silhouette of forgotten dreams as sparkles of reflections shimmered within it. I couldn't help but laugh. It's so surreal when the fragments of what once was revive and reach out only to retreat moments later. And yet all at once, the flickering lights danced gently around, creating patterns as the night swirled into existence, losing my train of thought anyway. And oh dear night, darkness, after all, seems to hold truths that surface, only to remind us of what we've sought to forget. Sometimes I think of those who came before, the shadows of forgotten souls echoing through our traces, perhaps gentle sighs where once lived visions of bravery and valor. I explode sometimes, carrying this silent burden. Yet the fire flickers, scraps of light beckoning comfort, whispers of things just beyond the horizon. It pulls me down the winding path in my own recollective maze, and there lies a spirit whispering, waiting for another adventurer, another heart to awaken lost secrets. And now, I stand at the threshold of my own truths and the search for what was lost in the soft whispers of moss-strewn corridors. Still today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. The nebula, traveler. How I remember it. Or perhaps not. The echoes that inhabit those serpentine tunnels. They told me many got lost there, but as time passes, the truth becomes a shadow, a mist that dissipates as it touches the cold walls of those ancient galleries. In fact, I believe that on one of those many nights, I myself walked through those corridors, cloaked in a mystery that, well, mocked reason. It's curious, isn't it, how humans are so prone to search for answers to questions never asked. Yes, sometimes I find myself thinking that maybe I descended from some ancestor who got lost amid the rocks and dust of the nebula, a distant relative who also experienced weariness beyond comprehension. I remember a passage, or was it a memory fabricated, where I saw a shivering tapestry beneath a breeze brushing through a hole in the rock, and the dancing patterns told tales without sound, a fountain of recollections that seemed to scream. There in the heart of the quiet citadel were murmurs in evasive shades, echoes of voices resonating like soft waves upon the rocks. You are here, but not here. An echo. Or would it simply be one echo, without the need for identity? The scent of moisture was intense, mixed with a feeling similar to that of dry leaves and the humidity of the air, like that fog embracing me in a soft embrace. And deeper still, there was something profound, more tangible than a distant glimmer. The being, well, perhaps it didn't even need a name. The truth is that I stood before the nebula, searching for something elusive that waited within those depths, and in that instant, it shimmered like a glistening star. I caught a fleeting glimpse, or perhaps I merely imagined it. But whatever it was, it felt close yet too distant to grasp. As I walked along the edge, the echoes followed me like shadows suspended in time. A haunting rhythm pulsed within me, carrying forward echoes of questions unanswered. Each step seemed to bring me closer, yet further away, entangled in a spiral of wistful wonder. There's something enchanting about that situation, isn't there? How our own minds create illusions and let us become prisoners of what we cannot understand. Perhaps there lies a sense of freedom between those echoes and glimmers dancing through my thoughts. I pondered, will I ever find the way? The question hung in the air, evaporating like mist surprised by the dawn. As the murmurs reverberated around me, I felt illuminated. Was it courage or folly that dragged me further into that maze? I felt time slipping mannerless around me, as my heart beat in rhythm with the pulses of light and shadow around me. A potent desire to uncover beyond the mist. But part of me remained withdrawn, in caution. The tension hummed in my veins, as if a silent warning echoed within me. Physically, I stood at the precipice, surrounded entirely by the echoes of lives that drifted through. Somewhere within the nebula, I sensed a deep sigh of contentment, or was it a lament? I struggled against its weight. That weight shields hidden memories. I realized I was welcome below those shadows. Now I feel as though something unraveling has found a bright, resplendent moment clinging somehow, desperately, softly to me. In retrospect, I sometimes ponder if the nebula was the cradle of an adventure without end. Perhaps those who inhabit the echoes still waited, still lingered, forever weaving their stories into the fabric of the eternal loom. Still today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. Ah, travelers, can you hear the leaves whispering, as if holding secrets? I sat at the edge of the fire, while the breeze caressed the trees. That place, the silent citadel where many passed but few remained, felt like a dream veiled in mist. It's curious how travelers leave only trails, vestiges of their dispersed souls, like dust in the air. Once, I recall. Yes, it was a foggy morning, or perhaps it was afternoon. In truth, I'm not sure of the time, and time, how imprecise it is. There was a group of strangers. They spoke among themselves in voices so soft they seemed floating melodies. Their laughter, a symphony of echoes. They passed like shadows, like leaves touched by the wind, almost ethereal. I remember the scent, a fragrance of pine and some spice I could never identify, something exotic. I wandered through the Citadel's halls when I saw them surrounded by a golden light, as if the sun happened to play with them for a moment. I think it was there, or perhaps not, where I left my heart. They had eyes that sparkled, glittered like stars in a dark night, and in their faces, an expression of resolve, yet at the same time, a deep sadness. I, an old knight entrenched in memories, could only watch as a wave of nostalgia filled me. Where do these travelers go? I thought, as the scent of dinner dissipated in the breeze. A naive question. Because we all know travelers must leave. Some of them wore worn velvet cloaks, and their boots, their boots were like the old shoes of the clowns I once knew. Clumsy and somehow comfortable. They laughed, but there was something deeper beneath the laughter, a melancholy that made me think about how time can carry things away, like the wind takes leaves. And even now, when the wind blows in that manner, I sometimes feel I left something behind in that place, but never knew what. One night I ventured into the cave that hid behind the Citadel. The walls were damp stone, and the sound of water dripping was like a distant lament. The sensation of humidity invaded my bones, and the air was thick. A familiar weight, like a blanket that never leaves, even on warm nights. And in that darkness, I found marks on the stone. Ah, those marks seemed to form symbols, futures or destinies slipping away from my weary hands. One of them, a circle with a dot in the middle, like a sun or perhaps a moon. And who knows, what else could it be? A time or a space that, in some way, did not quite fit into this reality. The cavern was small, and the light from the fire outside was distant, dancing through the shadows. I could swear I heard voices whispering coming from somewhere deep inside. There, a melody that gently beckoned me. But I hesitated. Would it be unwise to go deeper? And somehow I knew that those who ventured too far rarely returned. Just as those travelers. And why return, anyway? The world outside was full of promises and dangers, and many preferred to leave the echoes and shadows behind. Sometimes I think that all of it really happened. And there we were, silent, bound by our tales, walls adorned with stories, echoing in our very hearts. This is a curious thought. Perhaps those who merely passed and occasionally returned into the textures of time did not merely linger there, but rather flowed through the Citadel as ripe fruit tumbling from a tree. I feel myself waking in the corners of a still room amid mossy stone, and it reminds me of those travelers, while their ghostly forms carry the subtle outline of a fleeting moment of clarity. Still today, when the wind blows from that side, I hear something, but I don't know if it's real. Ah, the end of the journey in the mist, a farewell that I do not recognize in my weary heart. The light of day began to fade, as if the world decided to hide under a quilt of soft silence. The contours of the quiet Citadel, with its towers worn down by time, were blurred by the mist, appearing as ethereal as the memories I tried to gather in my mind. The first thing I recall is the smell, an aroma of damp earth and moss, mingled with the almost intoxicating sweetness of the rising mist, like an enchanted whisper. I stood before the entrance of the tunnels, those very same tunnels that many described as sources of profound mysteries and ancestral secrets. It was as if the air were impregnated with promises, but promises of what? I no longer knew. It was in that place that the echoes seemed alive, whispering stories of those who had already entered but never returned. Should have brought a lantern, I thought, even knowing deep down that what I longed for wasn't light, but rather the comfort of darkness. The realm below, with its cold stone walls haunted by shadows and memories. Ah, I sometimes think if it all really happened. The voices mingled in an insane dance, calling me to an indistinct farewell. A farewell for what? I do not know. It was there that I left something, but I can't recall what. Perhaps a piece of myself floating, lost among layers of moisture and mist. In the depths of the tunnel, there was a constant murmur, like the sound of a heartbeat, calling me, drawing me with a melody of nostalgia. It was as if the tunnels knew I would return, and perhaps in some way, they were ready to consume more than I was able to offer. With every step I took, the wind whispered lazily, dragging dry leaves that danced for a moment before settling down. The echoes that came from afar seemed to tell jokes from a time long past, but I could not decipher their meanings. A knight without armor is not a true knight. I chuckled, perhaps, or just my lips contracted, unable to discern between laughter and tears. The warmth of the embers was nostalgic, I remember, the scent of the burning wood absurdly comforting as my